Okay, everybody, good evening. This week, of course, is every week is special, but this one has an added special nature to it, and that is because Shavuot is coming actually tomorrow evening, and tonight is the we will be counting the Omer one more time for this year, Tafshin Pei Gimel. We're going to tonight discuss. I'm going to discuss Parshat Naso tonight, even though I know that we're not necessarily going to do Naso this week. We're not necessarily going to do Naso this week. In Eretz Yisrael, they will. The way it works is in Eretz Yisrael, because Shavuot is one day, that means Friday, Thursday night through Friday night. That means Shabbos itself will then be a regular Shabbos. And if that's the case, we move to the second parsha of the book of Pekudim, or the book of Numbers, B'Midbar, and for a while we will be in Galus will be one parsha behind. We'll catch up a little bit later, but that's basically the way it's working now. So I'll probably give two shiurim, one on Naso. One is tonight, and then probably in 2 weeks, when it'll also be Parshat Naso, I'll give a different one. So I hope, God willing, I'll give a different Parsha. Sure. All right. Tonight we're going to talk about the king, the head of each shevet, and humility. It's interesting that I'm going to read for you a passage from the Mishnah Torah. Mishnah Torah is the Rambam's codification of all of the halachot that we have in the Torah, in Shas, all over Shas. The way Shas was created, they used what we would call associative learning. Associative learning means that let's say if I'm talking about Hilchot Shabbat, or Hilchot Shabbos, so it might be I'll need to talk also about Yontif, because the Gemara may bring up a Yontif issue, or it may bring up an issue about davening on Shabbos. So all the laws of Shabbos could be all over Shas, and it's huge and massive. And it takes 7 years of dedicated work, as you know from Daf Yomi, to just to go through Shas, not even to talk about mastering Shas. So what the Rambam did was he created what he called Mishnah Torah, where he, with his brilliant mind, actually took all of the halachot that we have, all of Hilchot Shabbat, where it could be all over Shas, he put them in one spot. All of the halachot of Pesach, second spot. All of the halachot, God forbid, about mourning, third place. So that's what we call codification. So they were all placed in a way, so if I want to know the laws of Shabbos, I don't have to go through all of Shabbos, all of Shas, to find out this particular halacha. I can turn to the section on Hilchot Shabbat, and there, at one point or another, I will find that halacha that I'm looking for. The thoroughness of the Rambam is not to be believed. Only in the age of computers can we even come close to simulating the Rambam's brilliance. And of course, it's not enough that he didn't or almost never missed a halacha that was mentioned in Shas, but also each is placed in a certain order as to how we should know. Now, tonight, we're going to begin with a section in Mishnah Torah about davening. But we can use this at any time that we'd like, and we'll see how we're going to tie it in to this week's Parsha. But in Hilchot Tfilah, Rambam, toward the beginning of this masterpiece work, he created numerous sections One of them is simply called Hilchot Tefillah. And we're going to turn in Hilchot Tefillah to Perek Hey, the fifth passage, Halacha Yud, the 10th halacha in the passage. And in it, what he does is he actually quotes a Gemara. First, we're going to read the Gemara, then we'll see what the Rambam says. The Gemara is actually in Hilchot Brachot, in Masechet Brachot, the Masechta which deals with all kinds of brachot, everything from Birchot HaNe'anim, which would be brachot on what we eat, to Birchot HaMitzvah, to a bracha on what do you make when you set up a makkah on your house, when you set up a fence on your roof, or anything, all of these halachot he deals with. Now here, the Gemara begins as follows. When we're talking about Shemona Esrei, we all know that there are times that we bow Shemona Esrei, and we all know that we don't bow all the time. We bow at certain junctures. As a matter of fact, we're not supposed to bow at every bracha. We only bow 5 times in Shemona Esrei. But we're going to see that the Gemara is very thorough in telling us that there are different rules for different people when it comes to the recitation of Shemona Esrei. So the Gemara says, Kohen Gadol v'sof kol bracha u'bracha. The Kohen Gadol actually does bend at each bracha. Rofei Cholei Amo Yisrael, he bends at that point. V'lam Shinim, at the end, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mevarech Hashanim, for example, he bows at that bracha. That's what the Kohen Gadol did. We don't do that. We only bow 5 times at specifically designated times. And then the Gemara says, V'hamelech, what does a melech do? Chila kol bracha ubracha, the sof kol bracha ubracha. The beginning of each bracha and the end of each bracha, he bows. The beginning of each bracha, the end. So he actually bows even more. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani, v'didi mafar shali minei Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, head yoke. We have a little bit of a different view. Head yoke, that means the people who do not have some sort of title or designation. Kamo shamarnu, that's what we do, as we do. Melech, kivan shekora shuv eno zokeh. King, once he bows down this is the second view about a king. A king, once he bows down for the first bracha, eno zokeh. He does not stand erect for the entire Shemona Esrei. And Emar vayhi chalot Shlomo litpalel talks about Shlomo who was bent over when he completed and he davened the whole time. So at the end of his davening, kam milifnei mizbach Hashem. He then got up, straightened himself up in front of the mizbeach. Okay, machria nichroa al birkav, from the process of literally bowing down the entire Shemona Esrei. So here is Shlomo HaMelech, and Shlomo HaMelech, when he davened, especially at the inauguration of the Beit HaMikdash, so he bowed the entire time and did not elevate himself to stand erect until he had completed all of his tefillah. And the Rambam then says to us, this is the rule in general. HaMelech kiven sheshacha barishona, the king, at the outset of Shemona Esrei, once he bows, eino magbia rosho, he doesn't elevate his head again, ad shel gomer or latfilah, until he finishes all the tefillah. So you would think, well, what does this have to do with our parsha of Parshat Naso? Well, one of the things we know is that in Parshat Naso, each of the Nisi'im brought their korban for the day, and this was at the inauguration of the Mishkan. This was actually the same time that Nadav and Avihu, in their exuberance, brought a korban that they were not supposed to bring. They died. This parsha is within the month of their bringing the korban and their death. Now, we're going to see here that in the enumeration of the bringing of the korbanot, who was first? Well, we know that the first of the Nisim was Nachshon ben Aminadav. Now, the Chumash tells us a couple of things that are interesting. Vayhi, and it was Hamakriv Bayom Rishon, the person who brought the korban on behalf of his shevet on the first day at korbanot. Nachshon ben Aminadav leMate Yehuda was Nachshon ben Aminadav leMate Yehuda. He represented, at least it appeared that way, he represented the tribe of Yehuda. Now, Nachshon, of course, is known in Jewish history as a great hero of the Jewish people. He was known, according to our Medrash, Nachshon was the first person to jump into the Yam Suf when the Jews were faced with a tremendous dilemma about what to do: go forward and go into the Red Sea and perhaps face an entire nation drowning, or stay where they are and then face the advanced weaponry of Mitzrayim. And of course, we know that Nachshon, certainly according to our sources, Nachshon jumped into the Yam Suf, and then the people went across. He then becomes a historic figure of the Jewish people. It's interesting that Nachshon now is the first person designated to bring a korban on this national. This is the first time that the Jewish people nationally brought korbanot. Yes, they brought the korban pesach. That is true, but the inauguration of the Mishkan was such that this really is the first of the korbanot that were brought on the Mishkan, and so Nachshon is honored with that. That's the first thing. But the second thing is all the other Nesiim who brought the representatives of each shevet. Interestingly, they brought their own korbanot, but they brought it on the. They were introduced as nasi to each korban. Okay, to each tribe. So, for example, by Yom HaShlishi, on the third day, nasi livnei Zulam. The nasi, the person who was the leader of Zvulun. Each and every one of the Shvatim, we mentioned their nasi, and that it says specifically nasi, with the exception of Nachshon ben Aminadav, the very first. So there are different answers which are given. One is that Nachshon was a great anav. Nachshon himself was a person who eschewed any honors, despite the fact that he was. We find that, by the way, I think we find that in terms of the bravery of people, even it seems even among the non-Jewish people, when you ask, why did you do this? And they would say, well, that's just what I expect. I guess everybody would do if you were faced with such a simple, with such a terrible task. Let's say when they saved someone from difficulties and pain. So Nachshon felt that too, apparently. But nevertheless, he was recognized as a hero of the Jewish people. Now, let's talk a little bit about why is a melech, or the nasi eventually morphs into the concept of a melech. There were nasiim, but the first melech, of course, came hundreds of years later. That was Shaul. He was the first of the melachim, Uh, uh, the Torah tells us that it's a machlokus whether we're obligated to mitzvah to have a king or whether it's permission to have a king. So that we have a machloket as to what it is. But when it comes to the king, though, the Torah definitely designates several restrictions that no other Jew has. Right? They're not allowed to have excess number. He's not allowed to have wives beyond a certain number. He's not allowed to have horses beyond a certain number. He's not allowed to accumulate wealth. Okay, and the Torah tells us the vilti ram levavo, because along with status or stature comes the possibility of arrogance. And so now we can understand a little more about why the Torah tells us that we have an obligation. The Melech has an obligation that once he bows his head at the beginning of Shemona Esrei, that's what Shlomo did. He set the precedent, and that's what the Rambam says that all kings are required to do. You bow and do. If you're a king, you do not stand erect until you've completed Shemona Esrei. Then 3 steps back, and then you can once again stand erect. Whereas the rest of us just make 5. We bow 5 times, and in Shemona Esrei, and 2 in the beginning, 2 in the 2 at the end, and then modim. Okay, so that's what we do. Or actually, modim 1 at the end, and then of course when we depart from the Shechina, we step backward. So these are all done as a matter of both reverence and humility, and the king can lack that. So that's why we see the king has certain responsibilities that no one else has, certain limitations, not just responsibilities, limitations that not everybody has. And then this actually applies even back to the Nesiim. Nachshon himself could not see why people revered him so, and so he was, as a matter of fact, an Anav. But some people say that the Torah did not use the term Nasi for him because he didn't want it. Now, the question is asked, but what about Rav Yehuda HaNasi? We call Rav Yehuda HaNasi Rav Yehuda HaNasi. He is the prince, the king. So the answer which is given is simply this. People have titles for 2 reasons. The main reason is that they have earned the title either through their character or they've earned the title through their learning and character, and therefore we give them the title. But Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, that title is given not for the sake of the person himself, the persona Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. It is given because the people need to have a Nasi. The people need to be able to express reverence toward the greatest mind and the greatest character and persona of their age. So the Nasi title is much more for the people than it is for the individual. Now, I want to conclude with an interesting story. President Lincoln, back in 1865, when he was visiting Richmond, Virginia, after the war was over, and of course he died there. He was murdered shortly after the conclusion of the war at Appomattox. But he went to visit Richmond, and there the slaves who had been freed came and they saw him. He was so revered by them that they started literally to bow down to Lincoln. And Lincoln then made the following statement: "You must kneel to God only. I am but God's humble instrument. God bless you." would that it would be that that some of our leaders that we have, even among the Jews, would have this sense of humility that Lincoln had. It seems it was an intuitive element within him that not only did he see himself as greater than other people, but he did everything he could to dissuade people from turning him into something that he did not believe he was. But he said, he is what was he? A humble servant. But I am God's humble instrument. A very, very important lesson for all of us. We should always look upon ourselves as Hashem's humble instrument. And then, as Lincoln concluded, may God bless you. Bezrat Hashem, may we have a wonderful Shavuos. And Mirat Hashem, now this next week, I am not going to be in town. I won't be able to. The time difference will not allow for a shear on Wednesday night, no matter what people tell you or what messages you get. But in Mirat Hashem, we will pick it up the following week. So have a wonderful week and a wonderful Shavuot, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you.
Rabbi
Good
Meyer.
Shabbos. Good Yom Tov.
Have a good Yom Tov, a good Shabbos.
Shabbos, good Yom Tov to everybody.